Anyway, today's title of the sermon is, What's Your Sign? I remember when I was at school a couple months ago, I think this was probably during my sophomore year, I was sitting in our cafe with one of my friends, and while we were sitting there, she asked me what my sign was. And I said, is it the fishy one or something like that? Pisces, something along those lines. I don't know. I don't know, something like that. And she said, oh, that's why we get along so well. It's because I'm like a Taurus or a Sagittarius or whatever it is. Something along those lines. She said, we get along because that's my sign. And I was really confused because I was at a Christian school. And I realized that the mistake this girl was making was she was attributing power to the creation instead of the creator of the universe. She looked at the stars in the heaven and saw the power of God in them, but attributed that to the stars themselves. That is almost the exact state we find Israel in around the time of Jesus. See, for all of Israel's history, the evidence of a prophet was the miracles that he had performed. So we are coming out of a time where Israel had not seen a prophet in about 400 years. There had seemed to be, God had become silent. So in this time, people had begun to wait. And there was this sort of attitude that when the new prophet comes, when the Messiah comes, he will be brought with miracles. Miracles will precede him. And that's the story that we're going to dive into today. If you open in your Bibles with me to John 4:43. So as you're going there, you'll remember that for the next few weeks, we are going through the book of John, and we're going to be looking at all the miracles of Christ. And so we will begin by looking at his second miracle. This is the healing of the official son. So if we open up to John 43, it says that, there it is. All right, at the end of 2 days, Jesus went to Galilee. He himself had said that a prophet is not honored in his own town. Yet the Galileans welcomed him, for they had been in Jerusalem at the Passover celebration and had seen everything he did there. So the end of these 2 days that it is talking about is Jesus has just seen a massive revival break out in Samaria. The place that God is never supposed to go is coming on the end of a revival, and Christ is leaving. And one of the fascinating things about this revival is it was started with the woman at the well. Now, the amazing thing about that story is, if you notice, Jesus doesn't really perform any miracles there. He just speaks to the woman, and it leads to this massive revival. And then the Bible goes on to say that Christ said that a prophet was not honored in his hometown, but then he was honored in his hometown. So why this apparent contradiction? Well, it's almost, the way it comes across is it's almost not a real honoring of who he is. So it's almost like when I was in high school or even in college or even today, you see it all the time, and I saw it among a lot of my female friends. What would happen is there'd be a group of them together, and they'd be like, oh my God, did you see what Janet was wearing today? I cannot believe that she would even put that on and walk out of the house. And then Janet walks by, Janet, you are my best friend. Oh my gosh, kiss, kiss, hug, hug. That exact situation. That's kind of what's going on here. These people have seen some of the things that he's been doing, and so they're welcoming him because of the miracles that they've seen in him perform, those type of things. So as we go on, we continue in the story. We begin to see who is the center of it, and it's this official. So it says, if we continue on in 46 through 48, at the end of the 2 days, restart it again. No, we're going to go. We don't have to repeat that. As he traveled through Galilee, he came to Cana, where he had turned the water into wine. there was a government official nearby in Capernaum whose son was very sick. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged Jesus to come to Capernaum to heal his son, who was about to die. So, we see that Jesus is in a place. Once again, John is highlighting the fact that these people have seen Jesus' miracles. They saw his first one. They saw the things that he could do. And then we go, and all of a sudden we switch to this man who is coming from Capernaum. Now, it says nearby, but that's a kind of relative term. Capernaum and Galilee are about 20 miles apart. Now, that doesn't seem like a big deal to us, but in a time with no vehicles, no way to go, it's about an 8-hour journey this man had to take. So let me put this into context for you. When I was about 1 to 2 years old, I was just a baby. My mom was a young mother. I developed a fever, a really bad one, and it started to escalate super quickly. And what happens is when you're a child or a person and your fever spikes so suddenly, you begin to have a seizure. So I had a febrile seizure as a child. Now the average seizure in most people lasts anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. My seizure was 22 minutes long. 22 minutes of pure terror in my young mother's life. Many of you can understand the horror of witnessing something like that. So as my mom calls the hospital and the ambulance comes and they come and they arrive and I'm still seizing and they bring me up to the hospital and I'm still seizing. They bring me into the emergency room. They give me medicine. They give me tons. And they walk out and they tell my mom, we've given him so much medicine to stop this seizure that he stopped breathing. Now imagine yourself in that situation. Young, in your 20s, your child has stopped breathing, you don't know what's going to happen, and then having to get into your car and drive to Boston. Can you imagine the horror that entire trip? No cell phone, no way to communicate. You drive down there to find the best pediatrician in the country. You know that the pediatrician, who is the expert in seizures, can come and help make your child better. See, the way it describes this in the text is this boy was on the brink of death. His father leaving might have given up his last moments with this child in order to go find Christ. That takes faith and courage. See, it describes this man, a translation would call him a nobleman. He was a kingsman. He was related to royalty. This is a man who's used to getting what he wants. So keep that in mind as we go on to the next part of the story. So he's begging Jesus, and Jesus asks, will you never believe me unless you see miraculous signs and wonders? The official pleaded, Lord, please come now before my boy dies. So this is a man who is used to getting what he wants. He has the royalty behind him. And here is Christ almost rebuking him. So imagine with me, as this man rushes into Galilee, he rushes into Cana. He is trying to find Jesus. There's no phone book, there's no directory, there's no way for him to look and find Jesus quickly. So he's asking people, where is Jesus? My son is sick. Where is Jesus? My son is sick. Now remember, these people have seen the miracles Christ has performed. They've seen it. They've seen what he can do. So they start to gather around this man because they know what might happen. So there's a crowd with this man as he rushes and finally finds Christ. There's a crowd that's built up. There's an energy in the air. And then Jesus says, will you never believe me unless you see signs and wonders? And the Greek translate this as a you. The correct way to say it would be y'all. Would y'all never believe me unless y'all seen signs and wonders? So he's rebuking this crowd, and instantly the atmosphere changed. See, I imagine all of us went through high school at some point or in high school, and you can remember when a fight was about to break out on your campus. I remember one time when I think I was in 8th grade, I was walking home from school, and this one kid had wanted to fight some other kid because he wanted to prove he was tougher or something like that. And they're out there in the baseball field by the school of all places. They don't even try and hide it, like right in the open. There's like 20, 50 kids all around looking. And so the fight starts, and then all of a sudden, a cop comes rushing by, and you see the lights flash. You've never seen 50 kids move so fast in your life. Boom, they're gone. They just scatter. That's exactly what happens in this situation. See, Christ says, you will never believe me unless you see signs and wonders. And instantly the crowd disperses. But imagine you are once again in Boston, and you've got to the pediatrician's office, you've run into the hospital, desperate to find him. Your child is on the brink and door of death. And the nurses see this, so they start following, and some of the patients who aren't too severely hurt are following to see who this crazy person running around is. And you get to his office, and you say, my son, my child, my daughter, they're dying. I need you. And the pediatrician responds, you people only believe I'm a doctor because I heal people. And all the nurses are like, he's not going to help him. Who's going to help someone who just showed up? But would you walk away when you know this person could hold the only hope for your child in that moment? You would not walk away. And so the man pleads with Jesus, please, come. Lord, please come now before my little boy dies. You would plead the same exact way. So as the story continues, we see, then Jesus told him, go back home, your son will live. And the man believed what Jesus had said and started home. Now, imagine you're in this hospital. You said, please, you begged him, you've got the file with you. He takes it out, he opens it, looks at it, closes it, and says, your kid's alive. That's the better translation. Not your son will live, but your kid is living. It doesn't really tell you exactly what you want to hear. You need the doctor to come with you to the hospital. You don't want to let him go unless he comes with you. And so this man thinks that Christ must come with him. He's just been told that his boy's alive. He already sort of knew that. But he has the faith to believe that what Christ has said is true. So he begins his journey home. 8 more hours. With all desperation, he wanted Christ to come with him. I know if I was in that situation, I don't know if I would have had the courage to walk away, to just believe what he had said. See, and here we begin to see what Christ is doing with his miracles. He is weeding out those who are sign worshipers and those who are word worshipers. See, the people who had come with the crowd were worshiping the signs he performed, not the words he had to say. And that is why he was not honored in his hometown, because they worshiped his signs. And so with courage and faith, a father with a dying boy chooses to believe the words out of Christ's mouth. And as the story continues, while the man was on his way home, some of the servants met him with the news that his son was alive and well. He asked them when the boy had began to get better, and they replied, yesterday afternoon at 1 o'clock, his fever suddenly disappeared. Then the father realized that was the very time Jesus had told him, your son is living. and he and his entire household believed in Jesus, this was the second miraculous sign Jesus did in Galilee after coming from Judah. So this man is on his way home, still wondering if his son is going to survive, like this man in Galilee had said. And his servants, who had seen the boy suddenly get better, didn't want to cause him undue stress, so they rush out to try and meet him. So you can imagine the terror that father feels as these men are coming closer. He begins to recognize that it's his servants who are rushing. And are they rushing to tell him good or bad news? And finally, they tell him good news. They tell him his son has lived. So something has happened here. But the man isn't quite sure what. He's still trying to work out exactly what's going on. So what happens is, he asks them, when did he get better? He's trying to discern if Christ was just a prophet who was speaking the future, or if something deeper had happened. And when he hears the time that the boy was healed, he begins to realize that Christ had done a miracle through his own words. And in that moment, he begins to believe. See, but this is the second time the man has believed. Why is this time different? It's a belief that is deeper and goes to the core of his bones. See, when I get to heaven, when I eventually sit before the Lord, I can tell you I will believe. And it's not that I didn't believe before, but it's that I believe through the lens of this world. And for once, the goggles will come off, and I will see the face of the Lord, and I will have the truest belief that I can while I sit at the foot of his throne. And for a moment, this man is experiencing that. A true belief. The signs of heaven have opened up. But they've opened up because he started as a word worshiper and not a sign worshiper. We saw it last week in the miracle of the water at the well. When the servants, they had to put the water into the urns. They had to put them into the jars. They did what Christ had said, and then the miracle happened. They worshiped his words first, and then they saw the signs and miraculous wonders. This is completely contrary to what Israel has been living. If you look back to the greatest man in the Old Testament, Moses, the reason people followed him was because of his signs and wonders. But Christ comes and he turns that on his head and he says, follow me because I speak the words of God, and then you will see my signs and wonders. It's a beautiful moment that we begin to see. So if I could have the worship team come up, I'll begin to close. See, spoiler alert for the end of the story, I made it and I survived in the hospital. I'm still here. But the courage it took this man, see, we have to wonder how often our words proclaim the deity of Christ, but our actions profess something different. This man didn't just allow himself to honor Christ through his words. It wasn't, Janet, oh, you're so great. Oh, you're the best. It was, you're my friend. I believe everything that's coming out of your mouth. It was a real honoring. It wasn't a fake one. See, and the Bible, some scholars say this story of this man didn't end. Because in Acts 13:1, we see a man who is a foster brother of King Herod. Manasseh, I believe his name is. And many speculate that that is the nobleman whose house believed in Christ in these moments. That this man's story didn't end. He went on to serve the church. See, the foster brother of Herod came humbly at the feet of Christ. See, I've been substitute teaching a lot recently in the schools. And one day when I walked down the halls, I was looking at the projects on the walls. And one of the projects they did was they wrote different words to describe kids the classmates did. So they wrote like, oh, this person's cool, this person's smart, this person's fun. And I looked at one kid, and the word that was biggest on his thing was he was safe. What kind of fourth grader is safe? That's his descriptive word, is he's that safe kid. And I came to the realization that I don't want to live a safe Christianity. I want to have the courage for a moment to walk 8 hours away, to sit at the foot of the only man who can meet my needs in this world, to have the courage to believe the words that he say, not just the miracles that he professes in my life, that those miracles will follow on the heel of the things he's already poured out and blessed me with. That he is the Lord of time, that he is the Lord of all, that he is the Lord of this world. I don't want to be that safe kid. I want to dare to believe in something bigger and dare to take that next step. And however that looks in your life, don't be that safe kid. If that means you come up as the prayer team is up here and you finally unload those things in your life, you finally lay them because your boy is dying, whatever that looks like, if it's your finances, if it's your marriage, if it's your family, have the courage to believe the words that Christ has proclaimed. So if I could have the prayer team come up, allow yourself to take that step. It's not an 8-hour journey to sit at the foot of Christ. You can do it right here, right now in this moment. You can seize the opportunity to profess your need and your desire to him. And he will meet you with words, and he will meet you with miracles. So church, if you would stand as we close in one final worship song and allow it to help you make that step in your life, whatever that looks like in these moments. So the altar is free. Feel free to take those steps on that journey, church.